discuss the LGBT rights. We had already had one meeting that was extensive for the public to speak. So I would ask, and I also received a lot of letters which we reviewed. I'm going to ask the members of the committee if they wish to make any comments or have any questions first, and then I will open it up to the public for comments, but I would ask if you spoke the last meeting not to repeat. If you have something new that you wish to state, please do. But let's keep the meeting concise so we can keep moving along. First of all, do either one of the council members or committee members have a question or a comment? Nothing at the last minute from Mr. Dillon, the city attorney?
No, I haven't.
Okay. I will take brief comments then from the public. If you'll raise your hand, I'll call on you. Mr. Turner, go ahead and start. Please come up to the end of the table.
Thank you. I am Richard Turner. I live at 335 South Dakota Street. Good afternoon, lady and gentlemen. I'm the person who first brought the idea of a NDO, or non-discrimination ordinance, to the City Council for their consideration. I wanted to remind members of the committee and members here in the room, members of the community here in the room, that a draft of a non-discrimination ordinance for Dillon exists. I wrote it. It's in my hand. I sent a copy of it to Mr. Dillon, and I wonder if it was distributed to members of the council. Was it?
Yes.
Okay. For the benefit of those who may not be aware of what it contains, first of all, I don't deserve any sort of creative writing award for writing it. I simply copied most of it from Bozeman's ordinance and made a few changes as I saw the need. Anyway, a few features of the draft are that it fills the gap in Montana's non-discrimination protections. It adds sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression to race, age, national origin, physical or mental disability, marital status, religion, or creed as classes of people. It's against the law to discriminate against. It broadens the area of protected classes. Basically, the ordinance would make it illegal for a business or landlord to discriminate against people based upon their sexual orientation. In other words, if you're a landlord and you discover that one of your tenants is gay, you wouldn't have the right under this ordinance to evict them. If you find that an employee of yours is gay, you could not use that as a basis for firing that employee. The draft also makes certain exceptions in the public accommodations section, for distinctly private organizations such as the Elks or Lions Club, churches, or religious schools. So not everyone would be impacted by the ordinance. I read Mr. Dolan's letter to the City Council and noticed that it doesn't argue against the rightness of an ordinance protecting homosexuals. In fact, it didn't appear to me that he's in any particular way opposed to protecting gay people against unfair treatment. Instead, his letter offers a number of arguments based on phrases taken from state statutes, which aren't as unambiguous as he makes them out to be, in my opinion, for why the city of Dillon shouldn't pass a non-discrimination ordinance. I see these arguments, frankly, as excuses that the city council can use to avoid dealing with the underlying moral and constitutional issues of discrimination against gay people. His opinion offers the council a way not to anger a vocal minority of people in Dillon who consider homosexuals to be second-class citizens unworthy of protection from discrimination. They don't have to take a vote if the ordinance is disqualified on technical reasons. I'm not prepared to argue with Mr. Dillon about the fine points in the Montana statutes. But I want to point out that lawyers, city lawyers, for the cities of Butte, Bozeman, Helena, and Missoula have not found these fine points to be impediments to their ordinances. None of the city councils has been sued by business owners or landlords for interfering with their perceived right to punish homosexuals. Even in Billings, where the mayor broke a 5-5 tie on the city council, he didn't base his vote that temporarily killed that non-discrimination ordinance on any fine legal points. He said simply that the city of Billings wasn't ready for this ordinance, as though perhaps they lacked the maturity or something. I thought the remark was rather rude. Anyway, I don't have a lot more to say about this, except that I think that we have a chance here in Dillon to join Butte, Bozeman, Helena, and Missoula in remedying this oversight in the state's discrimination laws. Thank you.
Mr. Turner. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak?
My name is Dale Stewart, live at 711 Sunset West in Dillon here. And just a few comments. First of all, I think you've heard arguments on both sides. Those that are for this ordinance and those that are against the ordinance. Yes.
Didn't you testify at the first meeting?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay, her request was that those that already testified, she requested that they not testify again.
Yeah, she requested not to repeat the information we presented at the first.
Right.
Mr. Turner also testified at the first meeting.
Okay, but he's the proponent of the issue.
Yes, yes, sir. So I won't repeat the information I brought up at the first meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. So I just was saying that you've heard arguments on both sides, and so it's a definitely a hot issue. And I think something I want to point out that Mr. Turner obviously is for this, and I think he is the only one that has ever referred to a gay or lesbian person as a second-class citizen. You have not heard that from anybody opposed to this ordinance. It's not the issue of either second-class citizens or first-class citizens. What you've heard from those opposed to this is that it's not good law for the city of Dillon. And so that's what, something I just want you to remember. This isn't an issue of is it a second-class citizen or setting up somebody for failure, but is this good law for Dillon itself? I think I also have read the information from the city attorney, and he's done a great job of doing some research. A lot of research, and you've seen the statutes and the state laws, and you've seen the Supreme Court issues all in there, and it's presented in that case. So I think we have a city attorney that's done a lot of homework, and we should to listen to that. Just a thought on the Billings case is that the reason that the mayor there did say that they weren't ready for this is that, and I have it in print here, that they took an independent poll. And it showed in Billings that only 53% of the population there in Billings were opposed to this, and only 38 were for an ordinance like this. And so that was definitely the will of the people that was taken into account there. And just one closing thing, it's Again, I wrote articles in the paper and brought this up, that maybe this is a solution that's looking for a problem to happen. And this really has not been an issue in Dillon to this point on anybody's case. There's never been discrimination a case brought before the city council, any of the legal entities that we have here. There hasn't been proof that any discrimination has taken place. I had mentioned in my last, at the first meeting, that I checked with many members of the college to see if discrimination was taking place on the college campus, because that's probably our most diverse culture is the college campus, and was told no, there's not. And someone at that meeting said, well, yes, there is. But I checked with Ms. Hazelbecker, who's in charge of the student affairs there, and I asked her, I said, can you tell me, has there been discrimination taking place or not? She goes, absolutely not. She goes, when they first put up there was a gay and lesbian fraternity that wanted to start, and they allowed that to start on campus, and they said one girl who was a homosexual had a derogatory statement written on her whiteboard that hangs on her door. That's not discrimination, that's intimidation, and that's wrong, and I think we all agree with that. But according to Ms. Hazelbecker, there has never been a case of discrimination. No student for any reason has been denied class time or sports involvement or club involvement or right to speak on any issue. So again, I just want to encourage you as a council, first of all, thank you for all the work you put into this, to look at the recommendation from the attorney and take that and vote no on this ordinance, because in reality, it's really not needed in Dillon at this time. So,
I have a question.
yes, sir.
Did you give your address? Maybe I missed it.
Yes, sir. 711 Sunset West.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? Please.
Yes, my name is Michael Francisconi, 96 Fern Lane, 660-1633, if you want to call me and tell me where I'm wrong. Okay, basically, I think this is something that's happening all over the nation at this time, all over the world at this time, as a matter of fact. And because it is a particular group of people that have been historically targeted, we need to take that into consideration whenever we pass any kind of ordinances. Historically speaking, certain groups, women, people of different racial backgrounds, people of different religions, have been targeted and need that special protection for no other reason to bring into public consciousness that this is unacceptable. And if you're not discriminating against anybody, then it certainly in no way takes anything away from you. But it does open up for public discussion the fact that we all find this reprehensible. And therefore, a simple ordinance like this has a positive, but I don't see a negative. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right.
My name is Sheila Roberts. I live at 102 East Dillon Street, and I did speak at the first meeting, but I had something else to say. That's all right, the council. I just heard the gentleman in 7-Eleven say that basically that civil rights should be determined by the will of the majority, which is not the case in this country. If it was, many of us would not, in any kind of minority, would not have civil rights. Civil rights are a right of all the citizens of this country. And a straw poll or a kind of poll in Billings is not what should be determining our approach to this. And I think that's very important. It's really central to this country and the kinds of freedoms and rights that we enjoy here. It has always been the case that the minority needs protection from the majority. And that's really that kind of grassroots activity, which is what we're asking the council to do, is where all of our rights have been made. There was the grassroots that rose in our American Civil War. It was the grassroots that rose in the Revolutionary War. It's the grassroots that has always been the people who started. So just because our state has not seen fit to pass this sort of civil rights legislation does not mean that it can't start from here. And as you know, it has started in other communities, it can start here. Dillon could be a leader in that. Thank you.
Please come up the front.
Hello, my name is Linda Lyon. I live at 1527 Elias Lane, which is in the county. And I apologize, I'm getting over a cold, so I'm kind of... So I just wanted to say, in response to the gentleman's remarks about UMW, because I am a faculty member at the university and have been for the past 7 years, that a number of our students, contrary to what our dean has said, our dean of students has said regarding discrimination on campus, a number of the students have come to me in the past, over the last several years, about issues. And I think when we're talking about intimidation and discrimination being two different things, I don't agree, because I think you're being intimidated upon because you're being discriminated against. And their students don't feel that they have the ability to go forth with that anyone's going to be listening to them. So I think that's why, if they haven't followed through with reports and whatnot about situations that happen, that's probably why they feel like there isn't a channel for that. And being married to one of the only minorities in town, we've been embraced by Dillon, and I've always been made to feel very welcome by the community. And I would hope that if I was married to a woman in that same sense, that we would still have the same protection as my husband does, being a Muslim in this community. Thanks.
Are there any further comments? All right, come up the front.
Thank you for letting me comment. My name is Paul Peck, and I pastor a church in this town, but I live at 9500 Highway 324, still a Dillon address. I was wondering if I could have permission to ask our chief of police a question, and would that
Well, it's
be
usually
okay?
a little bit out of the scope, but I'll allow. It's up to him whether he can
Okay.
answer it.
Have you experienced or have you observed any of the discriminatory things, or would your department discriminate against any group in this community?
No, we wouldn't. First off, we would not discriminate against any group. There have been, over the years, 22 years of law enforcement, there's always been a certain amount of incidents that happen. And the ones that come to mind right off the top of my head have been able to be adjudicated by Montana Code Annotated.
Thank you. And I was wondering if the NGO, I'm asking another question, has that part in it that would also give access of males to female restrooms and locker rooms, and female to male things, depending upon what they feel like today as a transsexual. Maybe I'm feeling like a woman today, so I'm going to go into the ladies' bathroom or go into the girls' gymnasium. And actually, if you could have done that when I was a young boy, I'd have claimed something and gone in there with the girls, but anyway, sorry. But is that part of this NGO? Because that was one of the complaints that the mayor in Billings understood and voted the way he did. Is that in this?
Well, we haven't drafted an ordinance yet, so that's, as I said, probably be one of the discussions with the city attorney.
Okay.
It would be a difficult situation.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate all that you are doing, and thank you for addressing this issue. Thanks.
Okay, no more comments? Okay.
My name is Grace Sitzer. I live at 335 South Rife. And whether or not this is a good law for Dillon, I think that this is actually a great law. Maybe we haven't needed to use it yet, but that doesn't say that we might not. I think that an ordinance like this shows other people that Dillon is a place where people can be themselves, they can be accepted, and it's a safe place for them to live and to raise a family as who they are.
to make a rejoinder?
I'll let you make a rejoinder because you presented the idea, but from there I'll close the comments.
Okay. This bathroom issue always is raised, and I want to give a little history of what that is. There's something called, I think it's a bathroom panic, a campaign that was used to defeat a law in California that would protect transsexuals. It's the product of something called the Pacific Justice Institute. They're in all places, San Francisco, where you'd expect a more tolerant kind of outlook. But anyway, what they've done, the PJI, Pacific Justice Institute, is spread lies through emails and through their various sites about how men are sneaking into women's bathrooms and molesting them. There was even a video, which sounds comical to me. Yeah.
I'm not really too concerned with what's going on in California.
Okay.
If you want to make a comment of how you would solve that issue or how you would write that in ordinance
Okay.
and address it.
I'm trying to account for the opinion that was given that had to do with bathrooms and where it comes from. It comes from out of state. It's advanced by the Montana Family Foundation or something. And it's based on lies and slander. One of their test cases is a young girl, transgender girl in Colorado, who was accused by a student who was the daughter of very anti-homosexual parents. Anyway, she was accused of harassing girls in the toilet. And this was picked up on and was distributed through the internet to hundreds of organizations, including those in Montana. And it turns out it was simply untrue. She, the girl who made the original complaint recanted, actually, afterwards, and the superintendent of the Florence, Colorado schools said that no such event ever occurred, that it was made up out of whole cloth. And it's a slander against transsexuals just to attribute to them criminal intent just for going to the bathroom. It's by the way, I have a small photo which no one can see. This is the transgender girl who's called Jane Doe and her high school girlfriends. They're cozy, a tight group. She was very well accepted in her school. There were no problems. Any part of the school, including the girls' bathroom. Thank you.
I'm going to close the public comment and then ask if the committee members have any questions or comments they want to make at this point.
Well, I would point out in the city attorney's brief summary, it says the city of Dillon does not have the power to prescribe such conduct but exceed its scope of authority under Montana law and the city's charter. And so a question I would have for Mr. Dillon, we're under the charter form of government. Is this different from governments in place in Missoula, Bozeman, and so on?
Well, having not had access to necessarily review the governmental structure of those various governments you mentioned, Mr. Trotson, I would say that in general, the state, meaning the legislature, provides a grant of authority as to what the city government can do. As I pointed out, in my opinion, this committee and ultimately the city council is free to disregard my advice. I'm not suggesting, obviously, that be done, but I am suggesting that, as I think was pointed out, that certainly certain city attorneys around the state have felt otherwise. Their councils have maybe felt otherwise when they've been fronted with an opinion they don't like. So, does that answer your question?
Partially.
Okay, all right.
Well, and maybe it was an unfair question on my part, because I blindsided you with that question, you haven't had a chance to research.
Well, I would assume that they have that they have a city charter now, again, without specifically looking. And the question presented was whether, as I understood it, was whether this city's charter would enable it to do that. And I've said, no, I don't think it does. I think we would be exceeding the scope of the authority granted to the city.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Just a little bit for my own knowledge, what I haven't been able to sort out here is, like in particular, the housing thing. It seems that that's very well protected with what's available already. I can't find the gap.
Well, and that's, I think, part and parcel of the preemption. That's another reason. I hear a lot about, local grassroots efforts, that's why we're doing this. And I think it's because, frankly, a lot of folks feel that they're not being listened to up in Helena. And so maybe they have a legitimate reason to want to try to go city by city or county by county. But I have to look at the state of the law and apply it to the question presented here. You're right, Ms. Westhead, in the sense that I think there's a huge preemption argument that could be made that really the state law is the one that sets up, for instance, the Montana Residential Landlord Tenant Act. There's something in the statutes governing, and I think I've stated that in my opinion, that says that the city can't give less protection to landlords than that which is afforded to it by the Universal Landlord Tenant Act. So that tells me that obviously there's a preemption argument there. I don't know if that answers it.
They're pretty much, I just was clarifying that I was seeing it in the right picture. Is there any other question?
I was just going to say, it seems to me that there's plenty of state laws that cover these certain areas. For instance, with the residential discrimination, I know we have apartments and we can't discriminate. Yes, it doesn't matter race, creed, sex, anything. So, the way I see it, I don't know that Dillon really needs this ordinance, is my opinion. Because I think there's enough laws by the state that already cover the majority of this. Am I not? Correct? Or?
Well, I mean, I think that's really more of a legislative question that'll have to be debated among the Judiciary Committee and I suppose ultimately the City Council. I guess I would say that I think there are some real profound questions of human dignity that are being debated by our federal courts right now. I will anticipate, as I have in the memorandum to the Judiciary Committee, that I think we are going to see some things change, but that change is going to come, from the federal level and then from the state level. The legislature in Montana has, in two exceptions I've mentioned, recognized same-sex individuals as repealing certain statutes and things like that. So they have the power to do it. It's just, are they doing it at a pace that maybe some people who are in favor of this would like? Apparently not. But that's called rolling up your sleeves and going to your legislator and saying, here's what we want different. So I would say that that's really more of a policy that has to be debated among, I I guess, a committee of the legislature of this city, and then ultimately the city council.
One more question. By writing an ordinance like this, what risk does it put the city in for lawsuits?
Well, thank you, Mr. Nye. I think there is the potential for declaratory judgment action if an enforcement action is attempted against somebody. That hasn't, to my knowledge, happened. So I have to be, and again, that's to my knowledge, so I think perhaps Mr. Turner is correct in that. But half of my job is to keep people out of trouble. And I see the potential that could happen. I don't know that it will, but it's out there. I mean, if the city passes this, it's beyond the scope of its authority, and somebody is accused of discrimination under the terms of the ordinance and decides that, well, gee, City of Dillon, you didn't have the authority to do that in the first place. First thing I think any competent attorney is going to do is to tell the person that's aggrieved, we'll file a declaratory judgment action. We'll have a judge declare the statute unconstitutional. And so I think that's a risk, I think, to the city. I suppose the political risk is, it may not look as nice as some people, that, the council decides, no, we don't think this is something we want to enact. We'll go against the city attorney's advice. We'll do whatever we feel is maybe politically more expedient. That's a question that a legislative body has to answer for itself. I mean, I can't do that.
Thank you.
I think probably it has come time that we need a recommendation to the council as to whether we wish them to draft, or they wish the council to ask the city attorney to draft an ordinance or not. So,
Let me ask the mayor a question here, procedure. Do I have to make a motion in the affirmative in order to get it defeated?
yes, it
It
always has to be in the affirmative.
I move to approve.
Second.
Time for discussion, I guess.
Any other discussion?
Well, I just would add that I not only represent constituents in my ward, but my actions at this table affect all of the citizens of the city of Dillon. And I think we have to be responsive to what appears to be an overwhelming opinion or desire on this issue. And personal feelings aside, we still have an obligation to the majority of citizens in the city.
Could I ask Mr. Wilson a question? You
Yes.
say there's an overwhelming majority against this, what does
Address the table, the chair.
I did already,
Okay.
so you said I could ask you a question. I'd like to ask Mr. Wilson what he bases this perception on an overwhelming majority.
The chair will answer it. We had the previous meeting with lots of input, and we had lots of letters that we've reviewed.
Now, the previous meeting was pretty much 50-50.
I guess that's your opinion.
Okay.
When you ask a question, would you please identify yourself and your address, just like
Mark Reagan, 22 South Montana, representing Dillon Tribune.
Is
Thank
that your
you.
business or your residence?
That's my address. Thank you.
All in favor? All opposed?
Aye.
The recommendation to the council will be do not draft an ordinance on this issue. I do want to state that I really appreciate everyone's input, their sensitivity to this issue. The grace and clarity of presenting their points of view. We need this in Dillon on all our issues. So thank you very much for attending this meeting and other meetings. And the issue will be on the next agenda at the next council meeting in September. And then the council will make the final decision. Public comment not on the agenda within the jurisdiction of Dillon. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.